February the 1st, 2022. This is video number 11, and today I'm going to talk about failure. There are different kinds of failures, and I will look at that a little bit, but I'm not really trying to categorize failure so much as change the way one might think about failure. Now, perhaps you have a pretty enlightened view on trying something and not succeeding. And, this video might not be for you or have limited value. But I see a lot of people become defeated when they experience setbacks, when they fail at something. And I kind of want to examine what's really going on when we think we have failed something and question the degree to which we have actually failed. So there's a Winston Churchill quote. It's something about failure not being fatal or final. I think it is success is not final, failure is not fatal, and bravery is the ability to continue forward, or that's what makes someone courageous. I'll put the quote up as the image for the video because it really gets to the heart of what I want to talk about today, but I want to get a little more into it than a quote from a guy. And I'll probably have a couple other quotes from a couple other guys in here too. I kind of know where I'm going with this, but again, it is extemporaneous, so I don't totally know where I'm going with this. So bear with me, buckle up. Let's talk about failure. Sometimes when you fail, it is your fault. So this isn't a video about making excuses or passing blame, although, again, it may not be entirely your fault, and I want to look at that a little bit, but at the same time, there are instances in life where we do just fail, and it's a lack of insight on our part, a lack of motivation on our part. We just don't do the right thing at the right time, and because of that, whatever reward, accomplishment, goal, etc., does not come our way. And it's at that point that you have two honest options. You can try again, or you can move on to something else. A lot of us, and I've been guilty of this in the past, and I'm not a perfect human being. I'll probably be guilty of it at some point in the future. But we really get bogged down in the emotions of having not succeeded. We feel like failures because we have failed at something, and that's not helpful. Now, there's all kinds of ways to try to get out of that. And that's another video, and that's probably a counseling video. But what I'm talking about is trying to change our mind about failure to begin with, as kind of an inoculation, as kind of preventing these the kinds of thoughts that get us bogged down in our failures in the first place. And so when we screw up, when we fail for no fault of anyone's but our own, there are two options: try again or move on. And I'll talk about that more toward the end of the video, but I just wanted to get that out there right off the top. So sometimes what seems like our failure is actually someone else's failure. And this isn't, again, about passing the buck, it's just true. Sometimes someone else's failure is dumped on you because you're trying to accomplish a thing. And for those of you that are familiar with my more cultural, political philosophy kinds of stuff from Macrobius Americanae, here's your spicy take on this one. The example I'll give you is a promotion system. You could be doing really good at your job. You could be trying really hard to get promoted, and you just don't get promoted. Probably because it has nothing to do, if you are not kidding yourself and you are actually really good at your job, your failure to get promoted might not have anything to do with your job performance. There are a lot of other factors in the modern workplace, not the least of which is like personality similarities. So if you have a boss who, is a certain type of mentality, easygoing kind of person, not real hard with timetables, takes a lot of direction from the people above him and is just sort of like a middleman rather than a leader in and of himself. And you're a go-getter and you're a high performer and you are excellent at the job, you might actually get passed over because you're so good at the job. He might not want you to be the person sitting immediately under him. Now, I could also think of somebody like that would say, hey, if I've got, a high octane performer above me and a high octane performer below me, then that just means I'm going to be able to coast a whole lot more. And so if he's strategic about it, then, then I'm on a totally different topic now. That wouldn't be a thing. But you do have people that will be threatened, or not personally threatened, but the status quo, their working environment, the flow, their what works best for their personality can be upset if literally the best person for the job is chosen. And so they will pick somebody who's a little more malleable or a little more like them and easygoing, just to kind of keep, the work rhythm. That's not a terribly spicy take, though. So I want to give you another example. I'm sure there's a lot, in fact, I'm certain there's a lot of this kind of thing that goes on in the civilian workforce, but I can't speak to it with any authority. But what I can speak to with a little more insight and authority is how military promotions work. And I can promise you that when there's a promotion board and they have X number of promotions to hand out at any given rank in any given job, 100% of those positions will not be given to the top performers. So say if there are 8 available vacancies, to make admiral, the 8 best admirals that are up for promotion may very well not be the ones that are chosen. Now 4, 5, maybe even 6 of them will be, and it's certainly possible that all of them could be the best performers, but there are so many other things that a military promotion board is looking at other than, your job performance at your next lower level. They're looking at your whole career. So, maybe you had trouble when you were junior and you were just starting out in the military, and here you've fought through that and you've had a great career since. At higher levels of promotion, that can come back to haunt you. Something else they have to look at, and for those of you keeping score, here's your spicy take. They're also looking at demographics. So a promotion board that's only going to promote 8 personnel to a specific rank, especially a higher rank like a general or an admiral, a flag officer, they all can't look alike. Some of them have to be female. Military is primarily male. Some of those promotions have to be female. Some of those promotions have to be from various ethnicities. So just because you're the best at the job, if you don't check all the blocks, well, no, if you're the best at the job, you're probably going to get promoted. But just because you're one of the best at the job doesn't mean you're going to get promoted. Somebody who's just as good as you, who checks 3 or 4 different blocks, female, minority, etc., they're absolutely going to get promoted ahead of you. And even if they're slightly underperforming, so there's metrics for all this stuff. So, each year you serve in the military, you're being graded on your performance. And their grades on their performance of some of your competition might be slightly under you. Now, if it's significantly under you, I think most of the time you're still probably going to get that promotion. But if they're slightly under you, but they check 2 or more of these boxes, of these demographic categories that are not showing up in the pool of people to be promoted yet, you'll absolutely get left behind. Now, the real tragedy of this is if you check one of those boxes. So perhaps you are the 8th best person for promotion, but all you have to your demographic credit is that you're a woman. Well, somebody else who is a woman and also a minority who might be slightly less qualified than you will get that promotion. Or say you're a minority and you fought through, all these various social stigmas and, just, being a minority and getting these promotions in this system where most people don't look like you, and you've climbed all the way up to this final promotion, but you're a male minority. And there's somebody who's almost as good as you, but she's a female minority. You're probably not going to get that promotion. She's going to get it. And again, I'm not talking about, the top 50% of people promoted. I would say more times than not, that's completely based on merit. But if that meritorious top 50% of people selected for promotion don't look a certain way, if they don't check a certain number of boxes, the whole board can get thrown out. So, and then they have to start the process all over. So they're going to make sure before they submit their candidates for promotion that everybody that the total group has certain representations in it. And if you don't facilitate them meeting that, and you're not the absolute best candidate, you can find yourself getting left off the list. And that's not a failure on your part. Now, you're trying to accomplish a goal, which is have a career, get promoted, serve your country, whatever. And again, this works similarly in the corporate world. I just don't have the insights into it. That failure is not your fault. It's not. So you have to ask yourself, is this something that's worth pursuing? Especially again in the example I gave, that you're, looking to be like a general or an admiral. You can retire at any time. You're already eligible for retirement by the time you're getting looked at that. But let's say it happens to you earlier in your career. You have to ask yourself, is this an organization that I want to keep doing my best in and then not be rewarded appropriately for it? But those are things that can feel like failures to us. I've known people to just absolutely beat themselves up over not getting a promotion or not getting selected to like a school or a training opportunity, these kind of things. And it's not, it feels like a failure because you tried so hard to accomplish what you're doing, but the failure is somebody else's. Somebody else failed you. A system failed you. And so, it's better to ask yourself the difficult questions about what their failure means, despite the fact that you're putting in all the work, as opposed to, well, this is my failure, and now I'm going to, beat myself up over it, or I'm going to feel like a failure. It's just not the case. Okay, and then the third, and these are by no means the three definitive types of failure, but the third one that I want to address at the beginning of the video here is failure that is required to have success somewhere else. So a lot of this is like personal dignity stuff. We have certain standards for ourselves. We hold ourselves to certain standards. Some people never want to deceive anybody, right? They don't, not even a white lie. They just won't lie. But then you also maybe don't want to hurt people's feelings. There are truths that will hurt people's feelings. So you have to choose how you want to fail when you choose how you want to succeed. Do you want to succeed at not hurting this person's feelings? Well, then you're going to find yourself maybe feeling pressure to tell a white lie. Do you not want to tell a white lie? Well, then you're creating a scenario where that truth could very well hurt someone's feelings. So if we put ourselves in these situations where we think of navigating our, personal beliefs as successes and failures, then there are a lot of successes that will feel like failures because my commitment to the truth has caused me to hurt someone's feelings, and I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So now I feel like I failed even while I was doing what I thought was the right thing. And we see this where people get a lot of cognitive dissonance, or they can't navigate their relationships because it feels like there's no right answer. And so at that point, I think it's just helpful to not look at those situations as success and failure, and just look at them as like, life is messy. I have some ideas about how I want to navigate life, and I do the best I can. But the most truthful person probably not always going to be able to tell the truth. The most kind person is probably not always going to be kind, and they can be, but then there are costs associated with that. There are other commitments and other things you want to do, that will be left to the side. So again, it's you're doing the right thing and succeeding, but you're creating failure, what can seem like failures at the same time. So that those are no-win situations. So I think the best answer for that is just to not put yourself in no-win situations when you're navigating life. Don't think of trying to adhere to your personal moral code as a success or failure scenario. Just continue to try to adhere to your moral code. Have one, and then be honest with yourself about it. Like, it's worth re-examining your moral code, especially if you find yourself in a lot of these tight spots. But have a moral code, try to follow it, And then don't get too caught up in, every single success or failure or every single catch-22. Just continue to try to have and try to follow your moral code. Take the ones and zeros out of it and just accept, like, the world is a gray, messy place. And if you have a moral code and you're trying to follow it, then you're probably doing better than most people anyway. So, don't be too hard on yourself. Just continue to have a standard and try to meet it. And that's really all any of us can do. So what I've been doing with these as I go through them is something I talked about in the pastoral counseling video, and that's called reframing. So reframing is where you take an idea and the way you think about an idea, and then you try to think about it in a different way. And so what I'm really saying is a lot of these failures aren't failures. We just think of them as failures. And that ends up being the real problem, because especially if you're one of those people that when you fail, you don't bounce back really quickly, and you kind of dwell in that failure, and you let it eat at you, and you feel like a failure because you have failed. If that's the case, then there are ways to deal with that also, and that's, again, a whole nother video. But the main thing to do is just to not get in that situation in the first place. So these situations where we think we might have failed, are they really failures? Like before we even get to that point where we're going to call it a failure. And so I'll give you an example from my personal life that I'm going through right now. I've talked about my health. I'm losing weight, exercising, dieting. I'm trying to get my blood pressure down. Well, the checking my blood pressure regularly, those numbers aren't terribly consistent. Now, as I continue to get healthier, I've only been at it for a month, but as I continue to lose weight and be more active and take my medication regularly, as a general trend, those numbers have come down and they're in a much better place. But on any given day, the top number could be 15, different from what it was the day before. The bottom number can be, 6, 7 different from what it was the day before. So there's a general trend. We see this a lot with people like weight loss that obsess over the scales, the number on the scale. As a general trend over a month or over 6 months, that number on the scale, that pounds, it's coming down, it's coming down. But on any given day, depending on how much water you've drank and, how you observed your diet, you might be up a pound or two. If you're a big person like me, you might be up 4 or 5 pounds. And it's like, well, where did all that last 3 days of effort go if my weight's higher now? And it has nothing to do with but just maybe what you're carrying inside of you, not body fat, but just like your the food you've eaten and the water you've drank. You're still holding on to those. So that's not a failure at all, but it can feel, if you get too caught up in measuring one number to the next day after day, it can feel like a failure, which is demotivating. So then it's like, well, I did all that effort to lose all that weight, and now my weight is up. So do I even want to continue to put that effort in? So that's what we want to avoid. We want to stop looking at these, what is essentially just data. It's just information, and stop looking at it like failures and start looking at these as opportunities to make choices. So with my own situation, I was sick over the weekend, some kind of cold. Maybe it was the thing that shall not be named on YouTube. Maybe it wasn't, but my nose got jammed up again, which many of you know. I've struggled with sinus issues all last year. My nose was jammed up. I wasn't sleeping great. Just kind of felt icky, fatigued, achy. And so I didn't do great with my diet over the weekend, and I didn't exercise at all. So I didn't grossly overeat, because I still, I have a goal in mind and I'm committed to that goal. But I didn't stick to my stricter diet and my schedule because I was sick, and partly I didn't want to deny my body, fuel to repair itself, but partly because I just didn't have the wherewithal to stick to the diet. In much the same way, I did not exercise all weekend. So, now what? Is that a failure? Well, that's that second category where, it's nothing I did. I didn't do anything wrong. I got sick. There are germs out there. They bounce around. Sometimes you get one. Sometimes it it sets you back for a few days, or sometimes it sets you back for a month. I mean, just depends on, what you get and how your body responds to it. But none of that is within our direct control. So this set me back for a weekend. Is it a failure on my part because I lost my wherewithal because I was like literally like ill? And no, there was a part of me that was gonna, that kind of woke up this morning and was gonna feel like judgmental of myself and blame myself. And oh, here it is a month, and you're already breaking your diet, and you're going several days without exercising. All that day after day after day of exercising, and feeling good about it. And now here you are several days, and you haven't done that. And no, it's data. I look different. My body composition is changed just even in the short time that I've been dieting, exercising. I feel so much better. So absolutely not. This data that I've taken unplanned time off is just reinforcing the fact that I need to, now that I'm feeling better, get back at it. And so that's exactly it. The goal wasn't to exercise every day. The goal wasn't to calorie restrict for 6 days at a time. And the goal wasn't to only eat eggs and yogurt every other day. Those were things I was doing to support my goal. My actual goal is to get my blood pressure down. My actual goal is to increase my cardiovascular and pulmonary fitness. My goal is to lose weight, particularly to lose body fat. My goal is to get healthier and stronger. That's my goal. Well, taking a weekend off, planned or not, doesn't mean I failed my goal, right? It means I need to think about that goal. It means I need to not continue that trend, because that trend will lead me to failing at my goal. But those things that I didn't do over the weekend, they weren't the goal itself. The goal is still out there, and the goal is still getting positive progress toward it. So that's the data. You just got to look at the data and then make a choice. One of these quotes my version of it is all the obstacles in your path are the path, right? So we envision a path as a straight line, or we envision a path as like gentle curves. Here's where I'm starting, and there's my goal, and I'll draw a line between them, and that's my path. Well, that's not true. There are all kinds of things that are going to get in the way of your path, the obstacles in your path. Well, going around those things, or over those things, or under those things, that's the real path. The path isn't what we envisioned. When I started thinking about dieting, exercising, I wasn't thinking about 1 month in, I would be sick for a whole weekend. That's not the path I envisioned. And yet, that is the path that I am walking. We don't always get to choose the path. Sometimes the path reveals itself while we're on the journey. So rather than get angry that the path was different than I thought, rather than consider myself a failure for not properly envisioning the path or having to respond to the path, I just accept the path for what it is and get back to traveling it. And from here, I'm feeling better. And so now the path is looking a little more familiar. But the fact that there was an obstacle and I had to go around it, or, in the case of being sick, just endure that period of time, that's not a failure on my part. That's just a thing that happened. That's just a thing I got to deal with. So that's my example from my own life. Another thing about these instances that seem like failure, that could be failure, but they're not, is that they're life lessons. We think, well, maybe not we, but there's a thing in video games called get good. And so if you're playing a video game and you get to a difficult part of the game, you can reach a fail state. Sometimes if it's like a character driven game, they call that like dying. The character that you're playing in the game dies, and you have to go back to a previous save and try again. If it's like a word puzzle game or whatever, you just reach a fail state. You exhaust your number of attempts, or the time scale lapses, and you have to go back and try again. And sometimes you have to do that several times, and they call that get good. That's you have to keep trying it and doing it until you get better. So a lot of these in life, it's the same. A lot of these fail states aren't actually failures. They're just your opportunities to get good. It's just the scenario that you have to try again and again And depending on how hard it is and how bad you want it, again and again and again and again, until you actually get what, the success state, and move on to stick with the video game analogy, to move on to the next level, or to move on to the next thing, or to take whatever lesson you learned and then apply it to whatever new situation you want to be in. So that's a lot of what seems like failure is actually just opportunities. Now, they can be inconvenient, they can be frustrating, which I think is well, if we just consider it a failure, then we can throw in the towel and have a pity party. But that's not what we want to do. It's data, it's information. Do I really want this? Okay, well, then I'm going to have to try again. And when I try again, I'm going to have new lessons. I'm going to have new strategies. I'm going to be equipped with this data when I go in next time. And it happened again. Well, now I've got even more data, and I tried 2 different things and none of them worked, so I have to try a third thing. Or I tried these 2 things and they both got me this far, but then apparently I've got to try something else or put a different take on it. I think you get what I'm saying. That it's not about failing, it's about gathering life lessons during the attempt so you can attempt again. Or the self-learning, because sometimes if something doesn't come to us naturally, and something doesn't come to us after attempt and attempt and attempt, or something doesn't come to us because there's an unfairness in the situation that we're not sure we can overcome, that's where we learn about ourselves and about the world we live in. And I think it's important that rather than feel like a failure, that we take that opportunity to ask ourselves, is this what's best for me? You may want to ask yourself, is this really what I want? Or is this what I want from this opportunity, from this situation, from these people? That's fair too. But I think what we're really getting at is saying, is this what's best for me, given who I am, given what I tend to be good at, given what I tend to enjoy, given what I tend to find value in? Is trying this 20 more times, or even one more time, really what's best for me? And I think it's okay to ask that question. Sometimes people feel like anything that's self-interested is selfish, and I completely disagree with that. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to help other people either. So sometimes, it may be a dream, and you have to ask yourself, well, was it only that? I mean, some things that we dream about aren't actually in reality as valuable or as good as the dream that we had earlier about achieving them. So, we need to ask ourselves, is the dream only that? Is this what's best for me? So there's self-learning there, and there's learning about the world, because, while a lot of us want to change the world long term over the course of our lives, in any given instant, it's really hard to go up against the world. And maybe it's worth it to you, and maybe you will. But if you're more practically minded, changing the world usually comes later. And so if you're trying to have an immediate success or a near-term success, and there's some factor in the world that's getting in the way, it's unrealistic to think you're going to change the world. So maybe you need to try something different. Maybe you need to go a different direction. Or maybe you need to go up against the world. I mean, that's a romantical notion, but hey, if that's what's valuable to you, then do it. But do it knowing that that's what you're doing. Don't be naive about the fact that, yes, you're choosing to go up against the world. And maybe you'll succeed, and I hope you do. So really, in the broadest context, there's a Thomas Sowell quote. He's an economist, and he says, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And I think that's so true when we're trying to conceptualize these things that we casually call failures but aren't really failures. You're trading your time, you're trading your effort, you're trading your awareness, you're trading your opportunity to do other things. You're trading all that toward one end, or toward a certain end. And that end may not be achievable, or you may have to trade off a lot more of your time, talent, energy, money, opportunities than what it ends up being worth to you to get there. So again, that's not a failure, that's data. It's okay to say, hey, I tried this thing and I gave it my all, and then I tried it again, and it's not going to happen. So rather than try it 17 more times and still not get it, or have a pity party for 3 months and then be no better off toward that goal or any other goal, it's okay to just say, hey, you know what, this is not for me, or not for me right now, or my time and energy can be better spent elsewhere. And so that's really kind of what I want to talk. I wanted to reframe this casual concept of our daily failures as not failures at all. It's data. It's things to be learned from. It's life experience that can either be used in pursuit of the same goal, or to help us decide whether or not to pursue a different goal. And I live in that space. I used an example from my own life with my current situation. And so, I also didn't meet my goal on YouTube videos. I didn't do as many of them in January as I had hoped. Oh well, the goal isn't to do X number of YouTube videos per month. The goal is to start doing YouTube videos, and to continue to do YouTube videos, and to do videos that I think are helpful or interesting to other people. Well, that's an open-ended goal. I'm still doing that. Setting up little metrics along the way help motivate me. So trying to do X number a week motivated me to keep going. But just because I didn't always hit that per week number didn't mean I failed. I'm doing it right now. So this is me continuing to pursue success. So anyway, I think I repeated myself in there more than I meant to, but maybe different ways of saying it will strike people in different ways. But this is video number 11. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day.